Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know we love getting your input on what we should cover, and recently we've gotten a ton of requests to really dig into the legal issues swirling around former President Trump. It seemed like everyone's trying to untangle this web of investigations and court cases. So today we're taking a deep dive into the latest developments, and trust me, there are some twists and turns that are going to make your jaw drop. This deep dive is all centered around this massive report by Special Counsel Jack Smith. It's over 500 pages long.
Yeah, it's a beast.
It covers his investigations into Trump's handling of classified documents and, those alleged attempts to interfere with the 2020 election. But there's a big problem. This report is like a total political hot potato. Everyone's fighting over whether it should even see the light of day.
Well, you have to understand, this report isn't just some random document. It's a legally mandated summary of findings. It's all about transparency in these high-stakes investigations. Once it's done, it goes straight to the Attorney General, who then makes the call on whether to release it to the public. And obviously a report with potentially explosive allegations against a former president, well, it's gonna cause a stir.
Yeah, no kidding. And Trump's legal team is going all out to keep this thing buried. Just this past Monday, Trump's co-defendants in one of these cases, Carlos de Oliveira and Walt Nauta, they filed a motion in a Florida court to try and block the report from being published.
And what's really interesting about this is the court they chose. It's overseen by Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee.
Oh, wow. So there's already some history there.
A bit.
Yeah.
She's issued rulings favorable to him before, although those were later overturned. It's a tactic we call forum shopping, strategically picking a court or judge that might be more sympathetic to their case. It happens a lot in these big legal battles.
It's like they're choosing their battleground.
Yeah.
So they're trying to block the report through the courts, and they're also taking their case straight to the top. I mean, they sent this 15-page letter directly to Attorney General Merrick Garland, urging him to withhold the report.
And in that letter, they're pulling out all the stops, claiming Jack Smith's appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional, saying releasing the report would trash Trump's reputation, even alleging the funding for the whole investigation was dodgy.
I mean, you have to wonder, if they're so convinced there's nothing incriminating in this report, why fight so hard to keep it hidden? But let's talk about what we know so far about what might actually be in this report.
Well, some sources close to the investigation have been giving hints. And it sounds like the report is pretty critical of Trump's actions.
Like what, specifically?
His handling of classified documents after leaving office, and those alleged efforts to influence the 2020 election, of course. Some sources are even saying it might touch on his role in the events leading up to the January 6th Capitol riot. That would be huge.
A former president potentially linked to all of that? No wonder everyone's freaking out.
No.
But wasn't Trump immune from some things as president?
Right, presidential immunity. But remember, immunity doesn't equal innocence. It just means he couldn't be charged with certain crimes while in office. It sounds like this report tries to make that really clear. No charges doesn't mean there was no wrongdoing.
Gotcha. But I'm still stuck on this Judge Cannon thing. She's gotten criticism before for those rulings that seem to help Trump. And now she's the one who gets to decide on this motion to block the report. It feels a little, I don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people are worried about potential delays or even more legal maneuvering. The Justice Department has told Judge Cannon they won't release the report immediately, at least. They're giving everyone time to present their arguments. But, the 2025 presidential inauguration is coming up fast. There's a ton of pressure to make this report public.
It sounds like the Justice Department is walking a tightrope here. Transparency versus navigating a political minefield with huge consequences.
And it's not just about the legal stuff. The fallout from this report could really shake things up in the public eye, especially with the 2024 election coming up.
It's like this whole legal battle is happening right as we're gearing up for another presidential race.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but wonder if the timing of all this is just coincidence or if it's part of a bigger strategy.
Well, a lot of people think Trump's legal team is trying to stall, hoping to delay the release until after the election. That way it wouldn't hurt Trump's chances if he decides to run again.
So it's not just a legal fight, it's a political chess match.
Yeah.
And the stakes couldn't be higher. I mean, this isn't just about one man or one report. It's about the integrity of our institutions and the future of American democracy.
Wow. Yeah, and speaking of pressure, Trump's team is also trying to say that the whole investigation is illegitimate. One of their big arguments is that the special counsel's office was funded improperly.
I read about that. They're saying the money should have gone through a different process, needing extra approval from Congress. Is there any truth to that?
Not really. The funding mechanism they're challenging is something that was set up back in the 90s for exactly these kinds of investigations. It's been used tons of times since then with no problem. It seems like they're just trying to make the investigation look bad and get people doubting it.
It's like they're trying to create a distraction, shifting the focus away from what the report might say,
Right.
and instead making people question the whole investigation itself.
Exactly. And, it can be a pretty effective tactic, especially with someone like Trump, who's so good at controlling the narrative. By constantly questioning things and attacking the process, they're creating confusion and eroding trust in the people doing the investigating. It's a classic distraction play.
So we've got these legal battles, political maneuvering, and public opinion all tangled up together. It's tough to keep it all straight, let alone figure out what might happen next.
Absolutely. Let's break down the possible scenarios. The Justice Department has a few choices. They could just release the report as is, maybe including Trump's rebuttal letter, to be transparent and let the public decide for themselves.
That sounds like the simplest option. But with all these legal challenges, I doubt it's that easy.
Right. They could also wait for Judge Cantor's decision on the motion to block the report. But that could take a while, especially if she sides with Trump. And if that happens, we could see the case go to higher courts, maybe even the Supreme Court. Just imagine the legal circus that would be.
A Supreme Court battle over this report would be absolutely wild. The impact on both the legal and political world would be huge. And what about public trust in the judicial system?
You're absolutely right. The stakes are incredibly high. And the consequences of this case go way beyond the people involved. This is a story that could reshape American politics for years to come. It's like watching history unfold.
I'm starting to get why this case is so important and why everyone's so focused on it. It's more than just a legal drama. It's a real-life story with consequences that could affect all of us.
And remember, this report is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. There are still a bunch of other investigations and legal challenges going on around Trump. Each one has the potential to impact his future and the direction of American politics.
It's a lot to take in. I understand why you wanted to do a deep dive on this. It's definitely complicated. But it's crucial that we stay informed and engaged. This whole thing raises fundamental questions about accountability, transparency, the rule of law. It's a test for our democracy, and we all have a role to play in making sure those values win out.
You're absolutely right. Your engagement and willingness to dig into these complex issues are really important. The more we understand about the challenges facing our democracy, the better we'll be able to handle them and protect our future. But we've covered a lot of ground here. Maybe we should take a quick pause before diving into the final part of our deep dive.
That's a good idea. We've explored the possible contents of the report, the legal maneuvering, the wider political implications, but there's still more to uncover. We'll be right back to continue our deep dive into this fascinating and important case. Okay, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into this whole report situation. It's a lot, and the stakes are so high, not just for Trump, but for the whole country.
Absolutely. And with all the legal stuff and political back and forth, it's easy to lose sight of what really matters. This is about protecting the core of our democracy. Accountability, transparency, the rule of law.
It is kind of scary to think about how fragile that all is. I mean, if a former president can just dodge scrutiny, what does that say about our system?
That's a good point, and it shows why this case is such a big deal. Can our system of checks and balances actually hold up against powerful people? Can the truth come out when people are trying so hard to hide it?
It feels like we're at this turning point, Do we double down on our democratic values or just let them slip away? And whatever happens with this case could decide that.
Right. And how the public sees all this is really important too. If people start thinking the justice system is rigged or that it only works for the powerful, that's really bad for democracy.
So what can we as regular citizens even do to make sure those values are protected? It feels so big, especially with all the legal stuff and political games.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. But we're not powerless. Our democracy depends on people being informed and getting involved. Start by staying informed, get different perspectives, and really think about the information you see. Don't just believe everything you hear,
Be a smart news consumer. Question what you see and look for the truth, even when it's buried under a bunch of spin.
Exactly. And don't forget about civic engagement. Vote in every election. Support groups that are fighting to protect democracy, and hold your elected officials accountable.
Make your voice heard, demand transparency, and participate. Democracy isn't a spectator sport. We all have to play.
I like that. And remember, as important as this case is, it's just one part of this bigger fight to keep our democracy healthy. We have to stay aware, informed, and engaged if we want truth, accountability, and justice to win in the end.
You're right. The future of our country isn't just up to judges and politicians. It's up to all of us. We, the people, have the power to shape our nation, and that's a big responsibility. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dives into this report, the legal battles around it, and what it all means for our democracy. It's a story that's not over, and we'll definitely keep following it here at the Daily News Podcast. What are your thoughts? Did this deep dive change how you see this case? How do you think it'll affect our democracy? Let us know in the comments, and let's keep talking about this. Until next time, stay informed, stay involved, and stay vigilant.